Eventbrite, which are pretty much heavily focused on, they are pretty much really transactional, and they have like no story to them, basically. And you also have like community builders like Meetup. And with Meetup, it's more logistics heavy, if you know what I mean. Like you need to pretty much organize events and everybody comes together, and it's really it's a bit too formal in my opinion. And then clearly there's Snapchat, which is ephemeral posts. So the question is, why should a platform like Next Social exist? And my reason falls into a few buckets. Like I just said, social media has betrayed what it initially promised, where we have these apps pretty much prioritizing algorithms over authenticity, basically. And I think people have gotten tired of just seeing a feed of a bunch of things that they don't know. And monetization is also another thing where your attention is basically being harnessed every single time just so it can be monetized and the likes. And we also have the intent of them wanting to keep you isolated, wanting to keep you passive, wanting to keep you addicted to the platform itself. You get. What I'm trying to do is to flip the narrative, basically, and encourage real-world interaction with what I'm currently building, and also build meaningful communities through events and genuine interactions, basically. And I also try to, I also aim to prioritize presence over performance or metrics or likes and engagements and the likes, or virality and the likes. So I will switch right now to the app itself and demo it, so you have an idea of what I'm talking about. Hopefully this doesn't take too long. Yeah. So, like I already said, it's called Next Social, and it loads into this. So the first page of this step with is clearly the events page, and you are able to post different events as clearly states. And when you go into it, you have the details of the event. You can pretty much RSVP as so, determine whether you're attending the event or not. And then clearly there are the details of the event. You can click on the date and add it to your calendar and the likes. I'm going to discard that. And then you can also view attendees. That's people that are attending the event itself. And if I had a longer list, clearly this will be fully populated. And then what I also created with this was, within each event itself, I wanted sort of like a buzz where within each event people can pretty much talk about what exactly it is that's going on. People can update, people can decide to basically give updates about events, basically. And that's the reason why this buzz tab exists. So other than that, you can create an event. You pretty much come in here, you select one of these, and these are just random pictures I downloaded off Pinterest, and go in there, Flutter events, and you get to select your dates and as well as time. I'm just going to select random stuff just so as a demo. And then for the location, I would say, I don't know if it's going to be able to pick this. Yeah. And then some description. If this was a virtual event, I would click on this and I can easily put the link for the virtual event itself, but since this is not a virtual event, I'm not going to do that. And then I go to the preview and I can see a preview of what it's going to look like, and I hit post, create event, and it gets created. So I can just go to refresh and the event is there on my list, basically. So that's the events page, and we have the posts page as well. Pretty much the same concept. I can go in here, select select, and for this, it's strictly pictures alone. You can't post videos or anything. So I can go in here, select, click on next, write a caption, you get the idea, and then share, and that goes. You can like, you can write a comment, and that goes. And the backend itself uses Firebase for its backend, so there is that. Video as well. This only selects videos alone and nothing else. Get the idea. And then chairs. The idea behind chairs is sort of like a Twitter feed, basically, a microblogging feed, basically. You can create a chair. You can quote, which comes up like this. You can also reply. Yeah. And you can click on this itself, the chart itself, and it gives you the full detail of everything that's there. And then lastly, we have moments. And if you will notice with this, I made it in such a way where the controls are determined by your scroll direction. So you scroll up and all the control disappears to give you that immersive full view experience. When you scroll down, it comes back. And if you would see, depending on the page you are on, the last floating button changes. So it's context based, it's determined by the screen it says you are on. So if you're on the event page, clicking on that creates an event, post, clicking on that creates a post, video, and so on and so forth. Now, for the moment, this is supposed to be 24-hour posts, basically. That will disappear within 24 hours. Think of Snapchat and Instagram stories, basically. So with this, you can post anything. It could be pictures, let's make it that. It could be a video that you would share. And then it appears here. It could be a photo that you would share. And it appears here. And this, I made it in a way where it's kind of different from the way Instagram has its story made, where you literally just have a bunch of circles up top without necessarily knowing what someone has posted. So with this, I should have actually posted a bunch from different profiles so you see exactly how it is, but each person's profile gets stacked upon each other. So each post gets stacked upon each other, and it's in chronological order of how those posts are. So if I log in with another profile, for instance, and I post something else, you get how they're going to stack in chronological order. And then you get to scroll from left to right. So you can see a preview of all the posts and determine if you want to watch a single post or skip to the next and watch that. And with this, I have this controller called Chewy. So it's a package Chewy controller for playing videos, and with this you can control the speed, volume. You can rewind back a few seconds if you like, and fast forward a few seconds if you like, and you can also scroll down to pretty much. Sorry. Oh yeah. Oh, I thought it was time. Yeah. So you can. I'm pretty sure you get the idea, the gist behind the moments. And
what's the name of the package for the video?
Chewy.
Like
CHEWIE. Chewy. And yeah, on the floating bar, I can go into my profile page and view my profile, all my posts, my videos, my charts. I haven't completed the moments on my profile page yet, but that's work in progress. I can go in, edit my profile itself, so there is that. I can also change my email if I want. get the gist. I can decide to, I'm just trying to give you an idea of, like I can decide to go to someone else's profile, like clicking on their stuff, follow, unfollow, all these functionalities work. And what else? I can decide to turn on light mode, get gist, and I can decide to turn it off and sign out as well. There is the explore page, which I deleted a bunch of posts, so right now it's showing just a few posts that I have, and right now I haven't had it to collect all the tags that I currently have, from events to videos to posts. So right now it only collates the posts within the explore page itself. And my notification, the idea behind this is to have both notification and messages be within the same, within the same collection, basically, where you can pretty much scroll back and forth and see whatever notifications you have or see whatever messages you have. I'm just implementing the messages, but it's still work in progress. What else? Yeah, there's still a bunch of features that are yet to be implemented. The one big one I really need to work on is notification, because I know how important that is.
You have a backend?
Yeah, Firebase.
It's in Firebase.
Yeah, Firebase backend. And the one problem I'm currently having, and I was discussing with Michael earlier, is right now, so when I sign out, as you can see, I can sign in with both my email and password, or use Google Authenticate. And I was supposed to deploy this app onto the App Store before coming for this event, so you guys can try it out and get your hands dirty with it. But the app was rejected by Apple because I didn't, you know why, right? Because I didn't implement signing with Apple, and they asked me to go implement that, which I tried. I think I have everything right, but for some reason it still is a pain in the butt and it just wouldn't work. Signing with Google was pretty straightforward, and I did that within, I don't know, almost a single shot, and that worked. Let's see. Yeah, so
If you don't offer Google sign-in, then they won't ask you to do the app.
yeah, they won't. Yeah.
Yeah.
So my intention is to take off Google sign-in and just have email and password once I'm able to figure out the Apple stuff, and I go from there.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's everything I have. I can get back to the presentation if you want, or if we
Can you tell us about, we have time, so can you tell us a little bit about how you wrote it?
oh yeah, so I was also telling Michael, and Chad also knows about this. I'm not a traditional developer, and what I mean by that is, I have a technical background. My undergrad was in physics, my grad school was in electrical engineering. However, programming hasn't really been my biggest strength, so to speak. However, everybody knows AI has almost 10x a lot of people's abilities. And when I say 10x, I mean 10x for people like me. For engineers who are already 10x, they always complain about how AI slows them down and the likes. But for someone like me, I'm able to leverage it. And at first, when I first built this, it looked very, very similar to Instagram app itself, sort of like an Instagram clone. And with that, I was able to use ChatGPT, copy code, paste, and all that, and that was quite a hassle until I discovered agentic coding. And with that, I first started out with Climb, which really, really changed the game for me. I can literally describe what it is I want, and it goes through, it edits my files and the likes. And then after applying, I discovered root code, and root code took it to an entirely different level. And the one thing that's helped with me doing agentic coding is the fact that, one, I went through a Flutter course itself, so I actually know I have good fundamentals for writing Flutter code and the likes. That's one. And secondly, the other thing that really helps is the fact that I use version control, and without that, you will go insane because AI will literally just mess up your entire code. You get? So if I ask you to do something and it implements it, there's a chance, not a high chance per se, but there's a chance that it will break something else, and I can go and look at the difference between the previous version and the current version that it's just implemented and decide to either revert or tell it to change course or correct course and the likes. So that has really helped me, and also giving it instructions and telling it what to do and what not to do. The other pitfall that I sort of fell into was one with naming structure. Basically, naming structure for how my backend is going to look. And with that, I found that you have to probably have a rule telling you that these are my naming conventions that I want you to use for my backend. Don't deviate from it, because a lot of times, for instance, if you're familiar with Firebase, some documents, so for instance, profile documents, for instance, you could go in there and say one of the fields will be called created at, and then within user's documents, that same created at field, it can decide to call it created, it can decide to call it something entirely different, but it's both self-same functionality. And you would find out that by the time you start building the app and it gets to a point, there now becomes some sort of conflict in terms of when you're trying to send data and it's using either created at or created by or whatever it is it decides to come up with later on. So that's another thing where you need to really specify what your nomenclature is going to be. And besides that, the other thing I found were with the Firebase rules themselves. So the Firebase rules, initially I would have it go in, make modifications, and it just wipe out a bunch of rules. And I'll be like, man, revert, do not wipe out any rule. Whatever new rule you want to add, make it additive. But later on I found out that that might actually not even be the best. And I would have it basically write a script, break all my rules down into modular form, write a script to merge all the rules, because Firebase only accepts a long file of rules, basically. So I'll tell it, you know what, for my authentication, these are the rules I want. For my profile page, these are the rules I want. For my moments, these are the rules I want. And then when you want to build, merge everything together and deploy, instead of modifying the rule itself. So that really helps. And other than that, let's see, what else helps? Yeah, off the top of my head, I think those were the big drawbacks that I found that I was able to find workarounds. And I found out that the more I play with it, the more I'm able to have a good grasp of what its limitations are and what its strengths are, and work around those, basically. So, yeah.
You said you used Climb, which is
Yeah.
what Chad showed off last month. What was the second one you said?
Rule code.
How do you spell that?
Like kangaroo, R-O-O.
Okay, I haven't heard that one, actually.
Oh yeah, so it's a fork of Climb.
Okay.
So it used to be called Rule Climb, but now they call it Rule Code. And it came about because Climb had a bunch of features that the community would request, and they weren't moving fast enough. So the Rule guys said, you know what, let's fork this, and they go at a dizzying speed. They have a feature right now called, it started out as a feature called Boomerang, but now they call it Orchestrator. And with that, what you do is you tell it exactly what you want to build, and it's able to go and divide it into different subtasks and give different agents to build them. So it's going to divide into multiple subtasks, have that implemented, and then start again with another subtask, and now that's implemented, as opposed to one-shotting a feature, and that really helps. And the one thing that I've been doing lately is I start with the architect mode because it has different modes: architect, code, debug, and boomerang and the likes. I'll start with the architect mode, tell it exactly what I want to build, and then have it write out the plan to build it. And then usually from the architect mode, usually switches to code mode, but I'll tell you to switch to boomerang mode and implement the architect's plan, basically. So it now divides that into subtasks and goes and builds that. With that, I'm able to short things, because one shorting it when you're building like an entire feature sometimes can be hard. You get, so there is that.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
What made you choose Chewy over something like Video Player? Because Chewy seems to be dependent on a lot of other packages like Provider, Video Player, and others.
So that's a good question. So the reason I chose Chewy was because of the fact that the AI used Chewy when I asked it to implement one of my video features. I think it was within my Chirps page, but it used like a regular default video player for my videos page. And then when I saw the Chewy feature, and that's why I said AI would make different decisions based on different times. It doesn't naturally have the full context of the code base to the point where it just sticks to a single convention. So it chose Chewy for the video player there, and I was like, oh, I kind of like this. Let me bring it into my, what's it called, my videos feed. And the reason I like Chewy was because of the fact that I'm able to change my play speed. It pretty much gives me more control as opposed to the default video player that I think Flutter comes with.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't know which one you made mention of, but I don't know if that's the default one.
Yeah, it's the default one from the Flutter team, but it's also, I was just reading into Chewy, that's what it's utilizing for
Oh yeah,
like,
like
Provider and other.
yeah, it uses that at the back end, basically, very much as the engine itself. But on top of that, it adds more control on it that I don't think the default one comes with.
Have you noticed any? Are you just deploying on iOS, or is it iOS and Android?
So right now I've only built on iOS.
Okay.
I don't have an Android. I guess I would have done it on the Android simulator, but I haven't done that yet.
I haven't worked with the video player, but I worked at my job extensively with the audio players.
Yeah.
And when it gets the native platforms have extremely specific setups, so it might be worth doing a bit more testing when you end up doing that, because what I've noticed is there was a lot of inconsistencies. We had to write method channels to basically go around those problems. Just do something to look at.
Okay. Awesome. Definitely consider that. Yeah.
What's your, so you haven't launched this yet?
I was supposed to.
You were gonna try to launch it.
Yeah, I was gonna try to
This is the
launch
big-
it. Yeah, this was supposed to be my.
It's gonna go viral.
Oh yeah. No, my intention was just to get feedback, to have people try it out and relax. And my alternative to that, because I kind of had an idea that it wouldn't go through, and my alternative to that was to create like a Google form and just have people test it within test flights. So, and I know that can be inconvenient, so that's what I was shooting for the App Store instead.
So when you showed me your side project months ago,
Yeah.
it was more like an Instagram.
Yeah, clone, and that's what I.
Okay.
Yeah.
But now it seems like you've kind of changed it up a little bit. It's more like a social meetup app.
Exactly.
Is that what you're going for?
Exactly.
Events?
So, that took me a little bit to build. It's been almost a year since the first time I started building that, and I just scrapped that and decided to start again from scratch after discovering this agency coding stuff. And I started from scratch, and I built to an extent where I was like, okay, this is cool. And then I started running into issues with the way my backend was named, and I decided to scratch the whole thing again and build from scratch again. Andre Tapate talked about vibe coding and the fact that, yeah, you might have benefited some time, but this is AI, and the cost of writing code has gone to almost zero in terms of time and capital itself. So I decided, you know what, why not build from scratch again? But the third time I built from scratch, it was a whole lot faster because I knew exactly what I was gonna do. I knew exactly what instructions to give it, and I knew exactly what to tell it to avoid doing. So it was a whole lot faster. And I always look back to the third time I started, and I always I'm happy about the fact that I started the third time because the app didn't look anything like this. The third time I had a whole bunch of other ways of ideas that I just started to implement into it, and I really like the way it turned out.
Why do you think did it turn out different because you had a better idea of how to prompt it, or was it more like random, like it just came out better this time? Like,
oh no,
the model
so,
got better. I mean, what do you?
Yeah, so it turned out better for a couple of reasons. One, I sort of built the second time I built it to a point where going back to change certain designs would have taken like just too much unnecessary work. You get, but the third time I felt, you know what, it's a blank slate. I already have these ideas at the back of my mind that I wanted to implement anyways. So why not just start from scratch and implement those ideas? So that's one. But the second was, like you said, I've found out better ways to pretty much prompt the AI and also tell it things to avoid as opposed to things to actually do. So those two things.
How big are your prompts? Like, or do
So-
you keep them, or do you just?
So what I do, here's my process. I determine what features I want to write. So I have like a OneNote of features I want to write out, and then I write out those features with as much details as possible, and then I take that and feed it into ChatGPT and tell it this is exactly what I'm trying to do, and help me prompt my AI basically with full instructions, and then I take that and put it to.
So you're asking ChatGPT to write the prompt. Are you?
So I
know,
write
I know
prompts
your
into
day
ChatGPT.
job is like Microsoft, like
Yeah.
product management,
Yeah, program management.
program management.
Yeah.
So you're probably used to writing user stories, maybe. Is that
Yeah.
in specs and stuff?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you've already got that skill, and you're having ChatGPT like
Yeah.
help you with the prompt.
Yeah.
And then you put that in the root code.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
really good. But a lot of times I try not to be so too detailed per se. I'll take out a bunch of stuff that ChatGPT spits out. I just want better structure,
Okay.
basically. So at the end of the day, I'll take out a bunch of stuff that ChatGPT puts in. Because I also want the AI agent itself within my IDE to have good enough agents. Because I don't want to fully tell you, hey, these are the instructions that ChatGPT gave me. Use this,
Yeah.
use it. Because once I've started implementing features, it has enough context of my code base that ChatGPT doesn't really have. You know what I mean? So the only way ChatGPT has good enough context is when, because I have a project itself. You know, ChatGPT has projects. So I have a project itself that is solely about the app I'm building. So ChatGPT has context in terms of description of my project, but not in terms of implementation of my code. You get, so because of that, I take out a bunch of stuff because the AI agent itself is what implemented the code, and it has context of my code base that ChatGPT doesn't have.
Yeah.
So
And at least in Klein, which I'm more familiar with, they've got the
Yeah.
plan and the act mode.
Yeah.
I'm sure Rue has something equivalent.
yeah,
to
so
that.
Rue was one I first started with architect,
Okay.
code, and debug.
And do you use all three?
Yeah, so I
Okay.
use architect to start out. I only use architect when I'm trying to build out, like, for instance, I'm trying to build the next page.
Okay.
You get, so I'll use architect to do that, and then write the whole implementation itself. And then I'll use, I'll switch to code. The architect will switch to code by itself, basically. But now that they have Boomerang, I will tell it to switch to Boomerang, or I'll just have it go after its own, and then I'll hit cancel, and then switch to Boomerang, and then continue to Boomerang like that. That's what I do. Yeah.
And are you getting it to, where it's actually running the app and checking it for you?
Oh yeah, so you're talking of like TDD?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, just like, I know the demo I saw of Klein,
Yeah.
they were doing web development, and web's just,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
it'll pull up a web browser right
Yeah,
inside the
yeah.
Klein window, and it'll a runtime error, it'll go correct the error when you run it.
Yeah, yeah.
Are you doing
No,
that?
no,
Okay.
no. If I know how to do that, I probably should start doing that, because I find out that most times I would have to take a screenshot of like the error I have,
Okay.
and put it into, either copy the message or put it into what ChatGPT to like describe the error itself. Because there are times where even if I have the agents log debug the errors, it doesn't print out within the console. Where sometimes I'll just tell it, okay, you know what, just use print to print out the errors, and then that will work. Because sometimes I look, for some reason I don't know why that happened. Yeah. So, yeah.
I'm really curious because my experience so far using Climb and vibe coding, like I kind of hinted at in the presentation, there's been a couple things I've done that were like really great. Sailed right through.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is huge.
Yeah, yeah.
I got super excited about it.
Yeah.
And then the very next thing I did, which I'll demo, that's part of my demo here, I did a rebranding, and where I was all of the UI layer, all of material theme, and a lot of subjectiveness. It was horrible at that. It was like useless. It would make the code worse. So then I didn't use it at all. And then I'm working on some new stuff now, and I'm finding it struggles at the UI layer. Like
UI,
if it's
yeah.
doing like the logic, the business logic, and making API calls, it does that really well, but I'm struggling on the UI layer.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, like, cause like my neighbor is in construction and he's building like a project management app for construction. He's like getting pretty far. And I'm wondering if it's because I know too much, and I think it's coming down to the way I'm prompting it. Like,
Yeah.
I'm telling it to do something very specific,
Yeah.
and it doesn't do it, and I get
hyper
frustrated.
specific, yeah.
Right, whereas like, you might have an advantage, you might be like, hey man, build this. And it's just like, yeah.
So, yeah, I think you have a big point there, and I think you might be at sort of a disadvantage with the fact that because before AI came, you were already building apps and the like, so you know exactly what to implement. Me, on the other hand, I have the advantage of the fact that I don't even know how to implement clean architecture on my own.
Yeah.
But I know that there's a concept of clean architecture, and I tell you, okay, I write my code using clean architecture, and modularize my codes and the likes. And the other thing I did mention is the fact that whenever my code gets to over 400 lines, I pretty much tell it to break it down into different modules. So it breaks it down into a lot of widgets. So back to your point, I think you might be at a disadvantage because you know exactly what you want out of it, and if it doesn't implement it that way, it just frustrates you, and you just go in and just do it yourself.
Yeah.
You get. But for me, once the AI hits a certain point where it's just going over and over and doing the same shit over and over, I just leave it and just go. When I come back,
Yeah.
it gets right. So I think the AI has its moments as well. It gets, so that's just what I think. Yeah. Plus I also use VS Code's API as opposed to paying directly for. So I pay for Copilot and I use their API, and with that it takes me 2 hours to hit my break limit. And once my 2 hours is exhausted, I just leave. Even if there's a bug that's still there, I just leave. I try not to do anything.
Okay.
And then I go do something else. And then when I come back, I'm flying again. Yeah.
How much have you spent on Climb and probably Rue, because they kind of churn through money doing
Yeah,
this.
I just didn't mention the fact that I don't spend money. So I subscribe to Copilot, GitHub Copilot, and I use their VS Code.
Yeah, they've got they have in that drop down where you can select
Yeah.
what model you want, they added in the last month or so, or 2 months.
Oh, it's been a while.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
But they added, I don't use it, so I don't, but they added an option to basically tie into the visual code, the stuff that Visual Code's using, and you subscribe, like, Copilot's free at some level now. So it's basically using the free VS Code Copilot connection.
That's cool.
Yeah. So this is the real code. And studio at home that I use for my development. I barely use this computer. So this is what I use, VS Code. And I just come here and pick my model. And this is free until you hit your rate limits.
And what model do you use?
So I started using Sonnet 3.5 because it was fantastic when I first started. And then Gemini 2.5 came out and blew me
Really?
out of the water.
It's a big leap forward.
Yeah, it was really amazing.
I feel like Gemini being Google's model, that
Yeah.
it might have a leg up on Flutter, but I don't know.
Kinda
I-
nuts.
Yeah, I don't
Because
know.
there are times where
It
Gemini will
should.
struggle
Yeah.
with debugging something, and I just pick it up and I just switch to Claude, and Claude just one shot that thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's one shot debug and that's it.
Now, do you use 3.5 still, even though 3.7 came out?
I used 3.5, I used 3.7.
Did you try it?
So 3.7 I've tried.
Okay.
I didn't really see that it had better code outputs, and I saw online that it does too much. It might kind of be better, but it goes and touches things that you didn't ask it to touch and all that.
You know, I'm wondering, because when I first started, 3.5 was the flagship model,
Yeah.
and I was having really good success with it. And then I did that rebrand work where I didn't really use the AI much, and then when I came back to it, 3.7 was out, so I've only been using 3.7, and it's kind of been a hit or miss. Maybe it's the model.
It might be the model, honestly. It might be the model,
Yeah.
because 3.5, I've been using just 3.5 and Gemini 2.5 Pro,
Okay.
and that's been it. So yeah. And yeah, the last thing I decided to not do is touch my pub spec YAML file. I just tell it to pub add to it. Don't go in, don't edit, none of that. And that's it. Yeah. So
I guess the last question is, what are your hopes with this project? Was it just kind of a muse, or do you want this thing to, like, is this a startup that you're looking to start, or?
it's a startup instant.
Okay.
Yeah.
How are you plan on monetizing?
So as far as monetizing goes, there's the events part, which I plan on implementing some sort of payment system, where, for instance, whenever there's South by Southwest, for instance, there's a bunch of events going on around, and people pay for those events, and I can have a cut if those people are on my platform. So there is that, and then there's the usual social media monetization. And my other idea with this is to have, this might come down the line, but is to have some sort of gifting implemented into it. So someone's birthday is coming up, the person can have some sort of friends and other people just contribute towards their events tickets, and I take a cut of whatever it is that they raise. So
You gotta crack the audience problem before
yeah, I know.
monetization
I know.
matters, but.
Yeah. But I would try to start within UT Austin, just get that college students. Plus, there's also the fact that even if this launches and people don't find people that they know on it, they just leave anyways. So if I'm able to get maybe a school where everybody knows everybody and I have penetration within there,
Yeah.
I can decide to go to another school and
Yeah.
just keep doing that.
Yeah, because you've got a local component to it,
Yeah,
right? Because people
yeah.
wanna see events near them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So.
That's always the hard part.
Oh yeah, I know. Trust me. Yeah, I've read books like Fall in Love with the Problem and the Solution,
Okay.
by one of the co-founders of Waze, and it pretty much talks about finding DMF, not deciding to say you want to spread your word out there and then a bunch of people download your app and they churn anyway. If you can't fix your local first and you're trying to go global, you're gonna fail.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I understand that there's a huge challenge ahead, but one step at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Very cool.
yeah. Thanks.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, thanks. Alright, so I'm out.
Nate, you wanna go?
Sure, sounds good.
I've been doing. So, right, I guess to start, I'm Nate. So I went to school for music, and I did master's in music theory, and I think about music all the time, and so here we are thinking about more music. So, you know, a big gap I saw as a student, and then as a grad student teaching, and then as an adjunct professor, you know, the opportunities to practice your oral skills are limited. Are there any musicians here, by the way? Because if there are, I'm going to talk right to you. No, yeah, that's fine. This is also meant to be general purpose music curious, you know, as well. So basically, you know, I think if you think about folks practicing a practice room, you think, all right, they're working on their instrument hard, and that's all true. But if you're going to do, you know, any kind of music, you know, in a formal setting, there's oral skills classes you have to pass. There's just other things you need to practice that you can't necessarily work really hard on your instrument on. There's gaps there, and so what I've got is an oral skills trainer. And so it's basically the big picture is it's going to provide, you know, various sounds, and you have to make a decision about those sounds and what are they, how do they work, what are we talking about here? So, okay, well, it's I guess the resolution did not come across as well as I would like. This is on Android and iOS. If you want to download it for yourself and kind of take a closer look, so that's all out there. So I want to start with the smallest category of thing you can listen to and kind of build from there. So I have intervals and chords now. I almost have a melody section done to work on. So I want to kind of build and get, you know, a more complex oral sort of comprehension. So start with step one, which is intervals. So if you are a person who needs a refresher, or again is music curious or excited and just wants to really figure out music, you know, there's a start here guide. So I've got, you know, I break down, you know, how are intervals named, but you know, how are intervals named, you know, conventions, what do they sound like, and you know, to what to have in this app and not in this app. If you're not hearing something, it's not in the app. So because what I'm not doing is rewriting like a theory curriculum. I love music theory, but that's not what this is. This is to be, you know, listening and engaging in an oral way. So if you can't hear it, it's out of scope. Is kind of the gist here. So I have, you know, my first example here is, you know, you have like major thirds, minor thirds, right? And so what is 3? Well, why is it a 3? I kind of break that down. Translation is better, but yes. So I made a videos and I embedded them with Flutter's. I just built in video player, which was perfectly sufficient for this purpose. Yeah, I want people to be hear and see as much as possible. So for, you know, there's thirds, but there's also major, minor, and augmented and diminished qualities and different things. So those were both 6th, but they sound a little bit different, right? So just, you know, I break down video oral to like kind of help you get up to speed. So that's starting here, and then when we get more specific, you can go through all of the, you know, up to an octave, all the intervals. So if we go to the major 6, you've got major 6 in isolation, together, ascending, and then descending. So, you know, to have, you know, really granular, repeatable breakdown, because I think a lot of practicing an instrument, practicing your ear, is repetition. So finding ways to help learners do repetitions where they need them is a big, you know, deal just as a learner. And then I think intervals and chords aren't terribly exciting on their own. They're important, they're not super exciting. So when I'm able to give a little bit more context, I do. So something that you might recognize is, right, so our NBC thing, I don't work for NBC, but that first leap up is a major 6th, right? So, you know, connecting it to something you already know, you know, is crucial. You know, it could be folk songs, jingles, like whatever it is. There's lots of, you probably all know much more about music than you think you do, and so kind of tapping into, oh, I've heard that before, and then working with it is, you know, I think really, really important, and another place I want to meet learners and kind of get to where they are. So, you know, and I think a variety of examples is important. So that's major 7th. This sounds a little bit crunchy, right? But in context, you might hear this. Right, so that big leap at the end is a major 7th, right? And so you kind of want to hear it resolve to an octave, and then totally okay if this jargon is not meaningful. If you practice, it will be. But yeah, question.
Yeah, why does it sound different when it's alone versus when it's within like a string of other tones?
So do you mean?
Yeah, versus when it kind of sounds different when it's alone versus when it's within that string of other tones.
Yeah, exactly. As opposed to down here.
Yeah.
Right. So the difference is only aural. They're both major sevenths. So if you can see, so right at the end where the box is,
Yeah.
that's where the major seventh happens. So it's
Yeah.
the second to last thing you hear. Da da. So da da. Right. So that's your major seventh. So that's the idea. Like you're hearing a little bit of a difference there, and that's exactly the point of getting more context, because they do sound different. Depending on what's like surrounding them, and it can, even though it's the same exact thing. So, and like high range, low range, like it all, having like the round out like sound is like really important. So you're exactly right. Like it just trying to find new context to make sure you get what a major seventh is. Yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, just have some examples there, and then when you feel like you perfected all of that, we can get into a quiz. So we have quiz mode here. So yeah, you're presented. There's some quiz settings that I'll show in a second, but you're being asked to identify interval. Maybe okay, that's better. So we have question 1 here. So you can listen together, rising and falling. So if we pick the wrong answer, well, that was a minor third. So we get informed here, and then again, crucially, if you let's go here. So we get a new interval, and then the way to hear it up and down together is all how you would do it in a classroom. I think it's just helpful musically, but also this is all ways that you kind of get. You will be tested on it in this manner or something approximate in this manner. So that was kind of part of it too. So. Anyone know what this interval is? That's fine. So we'll go. We're gonna go wrong. No. Okay. So here I said unison. It was not a unison, but you still have an opportunity to listen. So you can't resubmit your answer, but you want to be kind of guided through. Like, okay, like I totally didn't hear that right. So I'm gonna. Okay, I see that I wasn't a unison now. It really was a perfect fit. So you have more opportunities to listen and kind of, evaluate what you are getting right and getting wrong. And then you can customize your difficulty and then your other quiz settings as you like. So here, so we can go advanced, and then I also have the option to limit the questions to the chosen difficulty if you're trying to just focus on a certain subset or intervals in this case. And you can go a certain number of questions. This is a built-in Flutter slider. I'm fine with it. I don't know. There might be more compelling UI choice, but it works. And any opportunity you have the user to not mess up is a good opportunity. So you can't mess up the slider. So that was a little bit of part of the reasoning there. And so chords are going to follow the same pattern. I won't go through this all again, but you have the quiz. So sounds like a minor chord to me. And if we go through, that sounds pretty crunchy, but I'll incorrectly say major. It's not a major chord, it's not a minor chord. So you can listen again. Okay, now I see something. So you can go through there in the same kind of structure. So yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. And then again, if you don't know anything about chords, you can come in here to get started, and I break it all down and make it as granular as possible. But again, if you want to, you can hear all chord qualities back to back here. So that's what I have now. My next topic that I'm close to finishing, but is proving a little stubborn, is to add a melody section to where you will hear a sequence of notes, and you have to put in correctly on a staff what the notes are. Music engraving is a whole can of worms that's much more complicated than it sounds like it would be, and I think kind of what you were saying too, when I try to explain very clearly, okay, G D sharp major has 6 sharps, and you can start the F sharp on the top line, and like go through like those sorts of like, okay, but if a note is found in the key signature, then add it, and like on and on, like it actually, but even just like something like a note head, so if we take a look at, so you see note heads, you just sort of like, oh yeah, it's notes, but then actually, you know, the size of the note head has to be exactly the size of one space, right, between the 2 lines. The stem is exactly an octave long, and on and on. Like there are many rules, and your key signature is only to happen in a certain sequence and all of that. So what I'm trying to do, I think the most effective solution is actually going to be to use an open source option, like so MuseScore, like it is open source and it's music engraving, and it's really excellent, and it doesn't know anything about Flutter. So you know, basically, you know, I don't need to reinvent the wheel. So anytime I don't need to, I don't want to. So I'm trying to figure out a way to make some sense. There's some okay Flutter packages that are out there that don't quite have everything I need. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about for development next for that. And then after melody, it'd be like, you know, harmony and like understanding chords and sequences and all that kind of stuff. But that's a couple steps down the road. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of what I got. And then just as a way to keep track of what you're up to. I thought, well, maybe, you know, rather than having it all be ephemeral, maybe we can track a couple of things. Just you know, not there's no backing yet. Just sort of locally on, you know, what are you getting right most? What are you getting wrong the most? How many have you finished? I've only logged in 1 day on this device, so I guess I haven't been practicing as much as I should have been. But
So there's no backend, you're storing all of the data locally?
right.
Okay, so how are you storing the data locally?
So it's just in local storage, I guess. I'm a web developer, so that's browser terminology, which I think is right, but yeah, just local storage in the
Okay.
in the app.
So, like in the shared preferences type?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I warn people that, you know, don't consider this permanent data. This is just your information, and then it would be nice to have obviously more kind of robust, but this is just for, yeah, just keep track of what you've been up to.
And so let's back up for a second. So what's your day job?
I got laid off,
Okay.
so I got time for Flutter.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you told me earlier. So you're a web developer normally,
Right.
and then it sounds like you're a really pretty passionate musician then as well.
Yeah. I play in a local ensemble here. It's called Cinematic Symphony, and we on Saturday we had our Star Wars concert. So yeah, it's great. So
Nice.
I'm actively playing.
And so who's the intended audience for this?
So it is college music students, but I would also expand that to, you know, right, so I'm in the community ensemble, and so there are folks in there, some are music educator, probably like music educator folks, but there are a lot of people in there who, like, you know, they played in high school and they just kind of kept playing but never thought about music professionally ever, and they're like, when my director says that major third should be, you know, 13 cents flat, I don't know what he's saying. So like that kind of person too, right? Who's definitely, they have played, but don't have necessarily any, you know, background in like, you know, more formal music, but are like, hey, I've heard these terms, and what do they mean, and how can I learn them? So those audiences, I think.
And what's your hope with this project? Do you want to try to make a business out of it, or just like you just want something out there, or do you already have a sort of built-in audience that you're going to go to if you play in a band or an orchestra?
I think I'm struggling with that. I think if I could make like music development like my day job, like that would be very exciting, and I would absolutely do that. And it would take more than just this app, because this is by design like a narrowly focused, like, okay, this is your training, and there are many, you know, music history, music theory. There are many things to do for music software development that I think could fill a lot of niches, and including getting, you know, kind of going to the next level of so this is for individual practice, but you could get into things like, okay, like having, you know, teachers assign things in an app, and then students do them, like get feedback, and like that whole cycle, like that could be another really interesting avenue too. So you know, music development generally, but I would love to do that, and getting there, I'm unclear on that path, but that's what I would really like to do.
Yeah. And I'm sure you've checked, there's probably people out on YouTube teaching these concepts and things. exist, the more direct path is just partner with the people who have already built the audience and go direct to them.
That's really interesting. I like that idea because there's lots of like good music YouTube out there. So this app makes you like you must do music.
Yeah.
Right. That's what this
And
is. You know.
the type of person who's seeking out content on YouTube to learn this stuff, that is your audience, right? So, and then the other observation I've made over the years, I've run into a number of musicians that are musicians on the side, and then like their side projects are always music apps related, because they're just passionate about it, right? And they're interested in it. And so I would think that anybody creating YouTube content probably has the same wiring that you do, and reaching out to them, they're probably like, dude, that'd be awesome, like let's work on this together.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that.
I would pursue that route. This is cool. And how did you use AI to build this at all, or what's your experience with AI stuff?
Yeah, so I did for intervals and chords. It was I would say minimal AI, and partly it was for the purpose of learning Flutter because I had taken a course on like Udemy and to try to figure out that you everyone get the basics, and so I was able to do most of this, especially since it didn't. Since I've done web development and I didn't need a back end for this, I felt pretty good about getting through most of it. But I mean, some of the business rules, it's sort of upsetting how you can kind of come like write out a complex or come up with a complex business rule and then it's just like done with it immediately when it would have taken a long time to write it out. So it just doesn't like that. But that was great. So for the melody section I'm trying to work on, I've used AI a lot more, kind of to see how that flow would go. And also, that's like I said, it's a lot more involved. That like to manage, draw, because it has you're gonna end up writing notes on a staff, and so to manage like the draw cycle and then make sure my problem now is like the whole screen's flashing, and I'm like, okay, well the Flame game engine should be able to handle different components, but it's triggering like redraws, so like working through that, like I'm like, well maybe AI can like help me like really smooth this out because that's an area that's new to me.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I've done, but I've tried Cursor. I don't know if anyone's tried Cursor, but it's or people have like gravitated. I wish I would have been able to come to the one last month or known about last month, but if Cursor has been like people liked it, disliked it.
Cursor is like probably one of the leading ones. I tried it, and then I tried Klein next, and that whole agentic stuff that took off, that happened like right as I tried Klein. So to me, it might have been a timing thing. I need to go back and try Cursor. But yeah, Cursor's well liked.
Yeah, that's the vibe I've got. I'm just curious if folks have different preferences.
Why did you opt for Flame? Just because it doesn't seem very UI intensive.
Oh, so this no Flame.
Okay.
But for drawing the melody, so there's going to be a piano keyboard on the bottom, and then you tap the keyboard and then draw a note.
Okay, got it.
And so like I think Flutter can do it on its own, but to make it like not like weird and like because you kind of have to not you don't want to redraw the whole thing. So I my thought was that Flame would be a way to go, and that it's possible that it's like overkill, and I would be happy to hear that criticism. But that was my reasoning where because the keyboard actually has a bunch of rules associated with it too, like the range needs to match like a treble and bass clef and like do all this stuff, but then so that was the thought, and then I thought there might be an extension to can this be more fun. I realize this is not like super dynamically exciting like gets you out of bed in the morning, but something like having like a grid of intervals, and then you hear an interval and then you tap like an image, right, and then like basically like you want to like black it all out, right, so you hear an interval, tap the right one, and then like it goes away, and then you want to like get rid of the whole grid of intervals after you hear like you have to get the right audio to like tap. Maybe I'm saying too many things at the same time, but basically have a game set up to where it's like okay, there's gonna be a timer. You have to hear the interval as fast as you can, and like go through the grid and like knock out all the images of the intervals or something like that. So I thought it could be a segue into like trying Flame since it's new to me and kind of what it can do. So that was kind of the thought too. So.
And you said like using local storage for it right now, and all the slides and content, are those like PDFs put together, or how, where does that content come from, I guess?
So yeah, these are videos that I made that are also, they're all in the app, all media assets in the app.
Okay.
When you said you made the video, like, are you actually playing the keyboard there?
For this, I used a program called Sibelius, which does like audio playback. But I mean, I sure can.
And then the visual, the video itself, how did you pick that?
In Premiere Pro.
Okay. So you're using a mixture of tools, and then you're exporting a video, and then you're compiling that right into the app.
Right.
Okay.
And yeah, no, exactly. And I did toy around. There is a YouTube, you know, I was like, well, maybe I want like an arbitrary number of like examples, and like they could just like pull a link from YouTube. But the YouTube package was sort of funny, and this ended up being easier. And they're pretty small videos, so I don't think I ran into this as concern, which is my kind of first thing. But if it's just here ready to go, I thought that it's faster and easier.
Yeah.
As long as it's not like, you know, 60 or 70.
One of the things, one of the rules we picked up over time is, do the simplest thing to get it working, and then when it breaks, then re-engineer it.
Yeah, yeah.
Cause you got so many other things to work on.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, that works good.
Yeah, you download like half your app in landscape, half your app in portrait. Have you had issues switching between like the two, kind of you have a lot of variety of content there, from quizzes to kind of more PDF style stuff to like the main screen. Have you had like UX UI complications when switching between the two, or are there certain aspects that only really you had to compromise and only make it work in landscape or portrait?
So far, I've been able to do both for both. I mean, really, I'm doing this because that's eligible. But no, it's both, and I mean that really, if you ever can do both, I mean my feeling is that you should, but that also comes from my web background where everyone says mobile first. I say mobile in mind. So you know, you do mobile in mind, and then have your regular web. So I'm just used to planning on multiple orientations. Like that's just my life. So yeah, so far so good as far as, you know, both modes. Flutter does have some pretty interesting, you know, like ways to manage that though, which have been really cool to find out. Because I can't use the same identical layout of both, so I've had to change it around for sure. But I think my tablet's wide enough where it always looks the same. But yeah.
Is there any reason this couldn't have just been a web page, a web app?
Well, see, I've been curious about Flutter Web too. But I think as far as, okay, if I'm making student needs practice, they're going to be practice.
Good.
So that.
It's like elementary school, the teacher's gonna be like.
I was stretching.
Okay, as long as you're good. Just really simply, like when you go to the practice room, like you're gonna have your phone with you, but you're probably not gonna have your computer. Like I just really wanted to be people where anywhere you can practice is where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
But no, I think Flutter Web is next on my list too. I'm very curious how it kind of translates over there.
Yeah.
I hear I don't know if folks have gotten deep into that, but I hear it's good, not great, is kind of my takeaway.
Yeah. So my last company I worked at, we launched on Flutter Web, and we were one of the first ones that used it when it went production, and it worked great. But I always say, like, the decision process we made to get to Flutter Web was we had a Flutter team. We were building an iOS and Android app, and then the product, and this was a new company, so the product team came to us and like, hey, we need to support web too. But it was a fallback. It was like we were mobile first, but well, the CEO wanted the web thing, and I was like, well, listen, like I'm not going to build a whole React team just to build this secondary offering thing. Yeah. And so it just made sense. Like that was a no-brainer.
Yeah.
But then like other companies that they've already got a React web team, and then they're adding on mobile. I don't know. Some of them I would just say go React Native or you know something else. So I think it has more to do with the organizational structure, but it worked great.
That's good to get.
Technically it works great. The one downside was and I think they've gotten better at this since we launched with it. But the one downside was
when you first hit it, it has to download the Flutter web engine. So there's a little download there, and there's a, you know, loading indicator that you don't control or didn't control at the time. So like you had that wait, and then when your app actually launched, I had another loading indicator. So you had like two different loading indicators. It was a little clunky when it started, but once it was cached and you came back to it, it worked great.
Sure.
And then the other thing is, you're downloading the Flutter web engine, and so like if it looks a certain way on iOS and a certain way on Android, it's gonna look the exact same way on web. There's no like cross-browser compatibility issues, nothing like that you're dealing with. So.
Yeah, that's nice.
Yeah.
You can also, if you want, you can render it in HTML on the Flutter web. It's way faster. Like if you have how fast is that?
I think they're deprecating that engine.
I think they're switching to, I think they're trying to switch to WebAssembly. Yeah, I think so.
Oh, yeah.
But for this type of app, if you're not worried about like SEO, it's quite powerful just to use the canvas kit like you were saying.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah, it's really good, and they've been making a lot of upgrades. There's still some browsers that aren't fully compatible, like things like Firefox, a few others, but as far as like getting into Chromium or Safari, stuff like that, it's really, really good.
That's good to know. Yeah, like I said, it's on the list for sure.
This app, I bet would probably just run out of the box. I think it would just run.
Okay, yeah. I've been wondering if it's gonna be a lot of tinkering or not, so.
No, it's pretty amazing.
It's when you start calling APIs that just don't exist. So when you start doing Face ID biometrics,
Oh, yeah.
you start calling all those APIs, then you have to like do some extra coding to say, well, this is well, don't do this thing, and there's another password.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Oh, and just repeat your landscape portrait note. So like when it's a phone with those elements are all stacked, right? And then same, that's all stacked there too. But then if you go, and then also on the front page here, those elements are all stacked too on portrait. So yeah, no, definitely consideration. So gotta keep that in mind.
Yeah, I've always found it a pain to figure out those exact negotiations.
Yeah, right. Man, thank you. Good information. Good to know.
I was trying to, so I showed this app off last fall. I have 3 side projects that I work on now full time, and okay, so I've got 3 apps that I work on. This one I just did a major rebranding effort, and wanted to share. So I've launched 2 features on this, and the first thing is that's just assuming nobody went to the first presentation. So this is an app for Catholics. I have a business partner who's a Catholic that we work on this together. This app's about 10 years old. It originally launched on just iOS, and then we paid somebody to build the Android version of the app. I kind of half maintained that. I did most of the development on iOS, and then I got into Flutter, and I lost interest in developing in iOS at all, and we wanted to do a bunch of work, and so I was like, well, I'll rewrite it in Flutter before I build and update the iOS and the Android version. So I did that. So about 1.5 years or 2 years ago, I rewrote this in Flutter, and I tried to just keep it feature parity, just basically recreate it in Flutter. We did that. That was successful. And then the first major feature I worked on this fall was this group prayer feature. So this feature helps Catholics. They pray these prayers, these 9-day prayers called novenas, and it's very simple. So you're praying these prayers, and it kind of keeps you on track to finish this prayer. And then up until last year, the only way you could pray was just alone. There was a sharing feature, so you could just tell others, hey, you should pray with me or whatever, but there was no like social or community aspect to it. So this required a lot of, so group prayer is what we just launched. And this required a lot of like re-architecting on the back end, to get the data in a way that I needed it so that we could all tie into the same novena, and then our prayer counts kind of increment globally. So I'll show all this off here. I'm gonna show the original version, and then I'll show the current one. So we just rebranded the app to Intercede. I'll talk about that. So as we launch in, go through this onboarding, and go ahead and log in. Forgot my password. That's my test account.
It's always demos.
Yeah. Okay, so we have 3 tabs along the bottom here, and this is sort of your home page or your dashboard, and it shows like any novenas that you're currently praying, and what day you're on, and you know, what you have to pray today, and then we recommend some additional novenas you could pray. Here we have just a list of all the novenas that we have in the app, and then we have our a profile. And what country, because it's a global app, so we put this flag in here to note where users are actually from. Okay, so then I'll show you one more thing. I just want to show you kind of what the app looks like with the current. And then if I were to pray a group prayer, I could start a new novena. And I'll begin this on a traditional day. Get reminders at 8 a.m. And then I want to invite others. Invite to a group prayer. And then I can copy a link and share that link out. And if people join, they'll so you can see like this group only has one participant in it, and there's only been one intercession, the single prayer that I did. Okay, so this is the current app, and this was the group prayer feature, so that we can all join in and join on the same prayer and with the same intention. All right. Now I'm going to switch over to the current app. So we have our new app icon. I've lost it. Does that one have a short in it? Hold it. Okay, so this is the rebranded version of the app. It's in dark mode right now, but you can see. Let me try Apple TV. prompting me for a code on the TV.
Some TV somewhere.
You might need to switch the input for the TVs, cause I think it's looking at the HDMI input. I think if you look on that tablet on the wall, it might let you switch the inputs. Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems good now.
Okay, so you can kind of see the rebranding effort, and just to tell you about this for a second, so we had wanted to do this for a while. We had that initial, because it was a side project, we just called it Pray. It's very generic. It doesn't, obviously more than just Catholics pray. At the time we launched, we were the only app named Pray, and we used to rank #1 for that keyword. If you go to the App Store now, there's a lot more apps named that. And so we were losing so there's like this pray.com, and I think like if you have like word of mouth, you really think about traffic. If you have word of mouth, they're like, hey, go download this app called Pray. I think this guy would steal most of our traffic. And so we were ranked at like #4. There's a bunch of other apps named Pray and stuff. And so we changed, we wanted a word that was brandable, and then also that we could rank #1 on, which we already were taking over #1. So that's why we did that. And we worked with we actually have enough, this app generates revenue, so we actually have enough revenue we hired a branding agency. And they gave us a branding guide with a color palette and fonts and everything. So this was our attempt to like really polish the app and bring it up to the next level a little bit. They did not have like a mobile designer on staff, so I basically, and I'm not a designer, so I basically was handed a branding guide with the fonts and the color scheme, the color palette, and then I had to figure it out from there. That was that was where I was saying like AI didn't help with that at all. The one thing AI did help with was on this screen. Well, if you attended my demo last month, this readability screen was completely AI built, and for that demo I wrote this like 8 times, and I had a screenshot that showed like every single time with the same prompt, same model, I got a different implementation. Sometimes it worked completely, sometimes it was close, and then you could kind of tell it like, oh, you need to fix this one thing, and it would fix it. But it looked different every time, which was kind of shows the non-deterministic nature of the AI tools. But this is the one I went with. You know, I can increase the font size and the line spacing and the font to make it more readable. But this screen here, where I've got this segmented bar, or segmented control, that took me a while to figure out, and I had a major breakthrough with AI on that one, because I couldn't figure out how to lay out all this information on the screen. It was just scrolling off the screen, and I couldn't figure out a way to make it like look decent. And then I did come up with the idea to like try the segmented control, and then I put that in the prompt and just said, I gave it one sentence, like, just, can you take this data and rework it to the segmented control? And it actually picked the same 3 segments that I had in my mind, but I didn't give it to them. So I kind of like that, and it basically got this layout to what you see here, and then I had to polish it the last like 5%. So it did help, and that took a number of iterations. So I would say like the AI did help, like it helps iterate on an idea really fast, because you can throw the code away and you don't feel like, oh man, I just implemented all this stuff. You don't feel that way about it. You're just kind of like, you're not married to the code at all. So I did have it do that, and then, but all the difficulty I had was, have y'all done a lot of like work with the material design and material theme? I don't really like it. I don't like, because I came from the iOS world, and that material theme is very Android heavy. Google made it to where material should work on iOS, and if you look at all the Google apps, it uses material. I don't particularly like it, and so, but I wanted to use this other UI framework that I had found. I'm blanking on the name right now, but it looked really simple and clean. But I realized I tried to switch to it as part of this rebranding effort. I was gonna like kind of redo the app using these other controls and get away from material completely. And I didn't want to go to the Cupertino because I don't want just iOS looking stuff. And I know that like Flutter supports the material way better than it supports Cupertino. So I didn't want to go Cupertino. I wanted to go to a third party control that just looked platform agnostic. And but as soon as I tried to use it with AI, that package is not very well known, right? And AI was just like, I don't know what this is. And I realized I was going to be at a big disadvantage. Like basically, I wouldn't be able to write any UI code if I used that library. And so I stuck with material and decided to try to really work with the material theming to see if I could get the controls or the widgets to lay out the way that I wanted. Because with the palette that the branding agency gave us was just like two colors, right? It was like this off black and that gold color. And material, if you just like, you can take this material theme and you give it a seed color, and then what it does is from that it extrapolates like 13 different shades of that color, and then uses it depending on the level, and I just did not like the way, and it looked like trash when I tried it, and I did not like it. So this was all stuff that the AI didn't help with at all. So like trying to figure out how to make this look what I think looks decent. How to make it look decent but while still using material, but not like bastardizing it so much that AI couldn't handle it, but not sticking with the default material settings, if that makes sense. And I think I got it. I got it kind of to a point that I like it. I think it looks pretty good, and it works in. Equivalent to what you saw on the original app, but I think it looks a lot better, and we got good reviews from it from online, and we have the new group rare feature, so that's all I got.
It's a paired app, right?
It's free. It's mostly free. These novenas, so basically the content in the app, some of them are locked. This one says unlock, and then you get the paywall. So yeah, and so we've got a regular version and a family version that works with the whole family, and a 14-day trial. And this app does really well globally. We have different prices depending on what country it's in. There are 4 price tiers. And it converts like 6 to 8% depending on the country.
You have a 14-day trial in there. Is there a reason for 14 days for a 9-day prayer?
Yeah, we actually wanted you to be able to finish a complete prayer, because the other option is a 7-day, and we didn't want to like get you started and cut you off, like, yeah, we just didn't feel right about that.
Are we locked, or given the App Store and iOS store there, are you locked to like week by week trial methods there, or can you do like a custom day range?
They might have introduced custom day ranges as a feature in the app stores. I haven't tried it. There's a 3, a 7, and a 14. They might have unlocked like custom days, but I don't know. I know they unlocked, they used to just have like price tiers, like 5, 10, and 15. I know they unlocked like you can just do 11 for 12 or 12.50 if you want. And then you set it, like for us, we set it in US dollars, and then they suggest an automatic price based on currency conversion. But you can override that with whatever you want.
So I have some questions. First is, why didn't you implement like a light and dark mode within the app itself, as opposed to just relying on the system's light and dark?
So that's a good question. I would say like, so we also tie into the accessibility font size.
Okay.
But what I generally try to do with all my apps is I tie into the system settings first, and then if I get to it, I'll give you an override locally.
Okay.
And like for this app, I've never even had the override, and no one's ever complained. So I think it's smart to like, you want to support the native system, the ecosystem you're running on. You want to support it as well as you can, including like you want your UX to feel like a mobile app that looks native on that platform. So having it respond to the system light and dark mode is that should be your default. And then, but just like so we did get specific feedback about the readability, especially when I went to this is not the standard system font. This is a style font that the design team, branding team chose, because they thought it looked more on brand. But we got specific feedback that it was less readable at the same size.
Yeah.
Like you have to go a little bit bigger, because like that's the system font there, which is just more readable. Anyway, I thought this is where I kind of broke down. So I'll give you like a local override. So we do pay attention here to the accessibility sizes. So it does resize based on your system settings. But even beyond that, you might, because like we've got some users that their system settings are like giant and it breaks everything. And so like having a way to sort of like go back to defaults and just break it down is nice. But in all of my apps, I think it's like a secondary thing. I would tie into the system first.
My next question is, you made mention of the fact that you had troubles with the third UI framework. That's probably because the AI doesn't have enough context around.
Yeah, there's no training data for that.
So
it wasn't just that, it was also like the very first thing I tried to do, I ran into one edge case that it didn't hit. And I was like, oh, this is just the problem. It's two dudes maintaining this like UI package. There's probably not a ton of people reporting bugs. I don't want to be a beta tester. So and plus the AI not knowing it, kind of it pulled me back to just use material. Like, don't try to work with you. So it's the combination.
So the suggestion around that would be, there is this MCP called Context 7.
Yeah, I just added that.
Okay.
So I didn't have that yet, but I use that, so he's referring to, there's a company, it's like a database, lookup company or something. And as part of their marketing and growth strategy, they put out, an MCP, server called Contact 7. And then they put, basically, if you go to like this third-party library, it has probably an online doc, right? And then they took that online doc and you can put it into their database, and then it'll have a package made. And then, you can add, Contact 7 as an MCP server to your like client instance. And then when you're giving it a prompt, you can say, I use the UI widgets from this library. Use Contact 7 to hook that up. And it'll go out to Contact 7, it'll download all the documents that are formatted specifically for the AI to read it. So it'll read all the docs so it has the context, and then it'll do your whatever you prompted it to do. And that helped me on, I just used that. It was one of the third-party libraries I use in my app. I think it was a notification library that I was using. It's pretty sweet. Have you used it as well?
Yeah, I recently added it and started.
Yeah, that just came out.
Yeah, it just came out.
Yeah, but they've got everything. Web library, it's not just Flutter.
I have no idea how to go.
Yeah, they've got, I think people can submit their own stuff.
Okay.
And so as soon as like you run into a library that they don't have, like I think you could go submit it. Yeah, it's pretty brilliant. Anything else?
Is there actually a Saint Corona that you prayed to about the coronavirus?
We got a lot of heat on that one. So when COVID hit, our stats went through the roof. So when lockdown happened, people started praying, like they got to pray. And my business partner, he's like, well, we should do something. And so he found this novena, and you know, some of them are like, you can read he writes all these. You can read their histories and what. That's not it. You know, read that history. So you can read their history, like when they lived, where they're from, and I think he's a Catholic, right? So he's like, I think we should pray this. Like, he wasn't saying this is the definitive, like, official this is not the official coronavirus novena, but he was basically suggesting like, hey, I can see how this would be a good one to pray for the coronavirus. And so he put that out there, but we got roasted on emails. They were like, this is not for the coronavirus, just the same question you just had.
That's funny.
But anyway, yeah, so that was cool. And then the group prayer feature, I don't have a way to show it to you, but there's so see how we recommend these recommended novenas? When I made that group prayer, the way I architected it, I was able to create another feature called community prayer. And the only difference is it's a group prayer, but then we advertise it right on the front page of the app. And Devin, my business partner, has the ability to just create a new, community prayer at any time at the back end, and then it'll show up. So the Pope just died, and within 2 hours, he had created a new novena that he wrote to pray for a 9-day prayer for the Pope passing, and then had it on the front page. And we broke all of our previous records for a number of, like, I think we had 5,000 people sign up for that one globally, since that's a worldwide Catholic event. So our new sort of marketing or growth strategy is using these community prayers, either partnering with Catholic influencers or just tying into like current events within the Catholic Church, and creating timely community prayers that people can join. And then when you join these group prayers, there's a big share button, so you can invite others to join the prayer with you.
Is that like a video chat and everything, or is it just people praying on their own at the same time?
It's, yeah, in the first version of it, it literally all is, because we had, my buddy's Corey's also very privacy conscious. Like I am too, but like he's next level. Like he will only talk to me on Signal chat, which is like, that's a whole nother thing. But so he didn't want. There's a feature in here. If you do a small group prayer, you can actually see the participants, and then you can send encouragement to them. And that's meant for like if we have a small prayer group, I might encourage, like if you haven't prayed yet today, I might encourage you to, hey, go pray. But in the community prayer, these are like just random people off the internet worldwide. So we turn that off. You don't see that. Literally in the community prayer, the only thing you see is that like each time somebody prays, that intercession count goes up by 1. So we'll have like 20,000 intercessions or 30,000 intercessions by the end of a 9-day global prayer, which I think, to me, that's pretty powerful, just knowing that like 30,000 prayers were said for this intention, and knowing that you're a part of that. That's kind of 1.0 of our group prayer. Now we're already getting, just like you want to build a minimum viable product to launch, like I'll do a minimum viable feature, and that's what this is. So this is just get it out there. Let's make sure all the kinks are worked out. We have no scalability issues, and then we start getting user feedback, like, well, what do they want to do next? And then we start listening to that feedback, and that's what decides like how we kind of expand on the feature.
It's pretty cool. I used to be Catholic actually. I never heard of a novena before. It kind of reminds me of a rosary, I guess.
Yeah.
Just like kind of like pray these prayers.
Yeah, they have some actually not Catholic, but I've learned a lot in 10 years. So yeah, you can do the 54-day rosary. So yeah, he's got some of that in here. When we launched the app, he wanted to do this kitchen sink app for Catholics. That was like the Catholics have their own calendar. They've got all their own language. They've got a bunch of like different traditions. They have indulgences. They've got all these like different things that they do. I was the one that suggested it. Hey, why don't we just do this novena thing? And let's just like focus on that one thing and do it really well. And that is the feedback we get in the App Store. If you look at so we have a perfect 5.0 rating, 33,000 ratings now.
That's ridiculous.
And you'll see why. I've learned all these like lessons over the years from the side projects, which I carry back into my work. But you have to prompt for ratings, and then you prompt at a point where they had an aha moment with the app. And so for us, like I think it's 70% or 68% of the people who start a novena actually finish it with our app. Which before the app, most people will tell you in their reviews, like I always forgot what day I was on, and then I would just stop praying because I forgot. 70% or 2/3 of them are actually finishing. And so if you finished your first 9-day novena, it's like, you get this like success prompt in the app, and then it prompts you like, hey, would you rate it 5 stars? And so the ratings just started taking off after that, because I'm only prompting people that got 9 days into the novena and finished, right? And you'll see like half the other trick, it's not a trick, but the other thing, like this is a great review here. And he's actually like putting thoughtful, like what about the app that he liked? But a lot of people will say stuff crisp, clean. This was after the rebrand, so I was really happy about that. A lot of people will say something about like, oh, St. Corona's amazing. It's like not about our app at all. It's just like they're just happy that they prayed to St. Corona.
That's funny.
But we got a 5-star review out of it, so yeah.
How do you manage the content? I assume it's done in a like non-technical, like you don't have to deploy code to get your content or get like add new
The updates to the content.
Yeah.
So we've got a backend. The one we're using is called Parse, because 10 years ago when we published it, that was like the Firebase of that time. They were the first ones that did that mobile backend as a service, what it's called. So we use something called Parse. And there's a dashboard that we have, and Devin can go in there and modify the content directly. And as soon as he publishes that, it's live.
Would you use Firebase if you were just starting over today?
So my other two projects, I use Firebase. I would definitely recommend Firebase, but I'd also look at what's that new one that everybody's using?
Superbase?
Superbase. That one's kind of got my eye. The only thing I'll say about it is just because I went through it with Parse. So Parse was a standalone. It was like the big darling of Silicon Valley, and InBass was a new product category, and they were the leaders. And so we were using Parse, and then Facebook bought it. Facebook maintained it for like 3 years, and then Zuckerberg was like, "Yeah, we don't need this anymore." And so they were just going to shut it down and just turn it off. And then the original founder of Parse, who was still at Facebook at the time, was like, "Hey, whoa, like, we should not do that. Why don't you give me 3 developers, we'll port it to Node.js, and we'll open source it and just let the community have it." And so they actually did that, so to their credit. So we're running on an open source Parse server that's still maintained, but like I wouldn't recommend it because like sometimes I'm the only one in there maintaining the Flutter library, right? Like it's like 1 dude or 2 dudes maintaining some of these libraries. So it's just not real, like when you start thinking about that back end, and like this project we thought was not gonna go anywhere. And then here we are 10 years later, and we're both, working on this near full time. So, and I tell you, like, if you told me I had to like change the back end to something like Superbase, like it would be a major effort, and the users would not get any benefit out of it. That would be the one reservation I have about Superbase. It is open source, and it seems to have a big thriving community, but like number of years in service is probably more important. So I would probably still go to Firebase if I thought this was going to be a production thing, because I know Google has maintained Firebase and grown it quite a bit. So they seem to be a pretty good maintainer of it.
Yeah, good to know.
Although Superbase looks great, it looks cool. Alright.
Does everyone want to bail, or do we still have time for one more? I can make it quick.
I'm good.
Or
Head
cut
out.
out? Yep. It's also cool for once to cut out.
You have a hard stop at 9, we have to be out of the room at 9.
I do have 10 minutes.
But that's for us.
Yeah,
plenty
Let's
of
do it.
time.
Let's try it real quick. This is the side project I created a few years ago. It's now fully in production, Android and iOS. Don't really do much on it anymore, besides maybe some social media posts and whatnot. During my undergrad, I went to cannabis, so when I went to get my initial job, it was actually when COVID hit. I was in Germany studying for my master's, and I basically got locked in a room because of how strict the lockdown was. So I decided to look into something I could create. I looked at React Native and Flutter, decided to stick with Flutter because of the syntax. And then I tried mirroring essentially the company I work for, one of their flagship apps. This was that, and it was basically themed around medical cannabis. Doesn't look like that anymore. Now it's just something I completely redesigned in Flutter or Figma, and then rewrote the entire app in Flutter. So it's called Cannabook. It has I have a basically a SaaS subscription that you can do for $5 a month. I currently have a little over 200 active premium subscribers. But again, I don't really do anything. I've never done any ads besides like a tiny bit on social media with like posting. And then the gist of it is that it's really started as a journal app, because that's what I was trying to mirror for the company I work for now. And I've just iterated on a bit, and then once it got to a certain point, I didn't really know what else to do, so I just reached out to my users, and a lot of these features are based off what they were suggesting. So you have the journal, there's challenges that you can complete, you can go through the various flows and do whatever you want to do to input something, so then they can track this particular data. So you just earned a challenge just because of the beaver's there. This particular data is then stored and aggregated It's not right here, this is just a paywall, so the data that's actually being shown is just a demo, where users can actually see what it would be like if they're paying. This is really probably the main premium aspect. But going through that, there's, I think, my favorite aspect, because I started trying to get people to stop using like smoking and all that other stuff, to try to do edibles, and that seems to have been a pretty big selling point. So you can go through here. One of the other premium aspects is when they're creating their own recipes. If they were to create a second one, they'll hit another paywall, just for time, can skip that. This does have the kind of the same flow going through, just depending on what the context is that they want to add. Right now I'm adding a new feature on the side that I'm just kind of really slowly working on, but not really enough time to go through with that. But this kind of just goes through. You can favorite stuff, you can go through similar recipes that will then populate based off what you're selecting. You can share it, you can complete these, which is also then fed into the analytics. There's a whole bunch of stuff with the statistics. And then as far as the premium or profile aspects, there's always like a tip that's generated, and then they can actually get a point from that and earn what I call seeds, which are basically just experience that are themed based on the app. There's different achievements that they can then view, and there's levels based on the achievement. There's also the leveling system. They can view the leveling system based on that or the achievements, and then level up. This actually increased user retention a huge amount, and I made my own twist on it, but I kind of was just mocking off of Duolingo. That was where my inspiration came from. There's also a string library that has over 2,000 different strings that I just ripped from a database and then made it my own, and then they can search through that if they want. So this is the little pop-up, has to be Cinco de Mayo, so then it's themed on that, and it's just really kind of an upsell. They have settings. In the settings they can go through, edit their account if they want, change the light or dark if they want, change the color of the app. Their security, so you can also enable biometrics, but that is a premium feature. And then if you have to do it, fill up the paywall again. You can go through, there's notifications. The notifications are themed based off what the user is doing, and based off the time that they selected. So it would be based a bit off their habits and kind of just general cannabis stuff. Part of the integration that I'm doing right now is it's integrating health data. It's just taking a bit longer because my goal, I've already integrated all the health data, so it's cross-platform. But my goal is to then utilize that health data in conjunction with the data I'm collecting from the journal and from the recipes and other stuff. And then the health data is from like different wearables, and I want to feed that to an LLM that I'm then just providing real-time feedback, and that feedback they can then use for actionable actual health insights. Because the goal that I've been trying to transition to is strictly actually medical. I noticed a lot of people are using it recreational. That's also why I have this blog section, which is from my actual website. And then there's just various blogs that they can go through, they can read if they want. And I wrote all these a while ago.
How do you download the content from the blog? Is it integrated in here?
Yeah, so right now, just for time, I ended up, I created all of them in Markdown on my website, and then I was able to just pull them over. So it's actually stored locally, but I just thought it would be a time saver. I'm going to end up throwing that on my back end, but I just haven't done that yet. I figured it was a little bit quicker this way, and since they're identical, it's really, I just copy pasted it really quick. I am using Firebase for certain aspects, but since it's a side project and I don't really mess with it, it's just a source of passive income, then I kind of only allocate free time that I have to it at this point. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more detail. I don't want to hold you guys up too much, but that's kind of the gist of it. I was able to have over, I think I just passed 25,000 downloads. I have over 1,000 monthly active users, and like I said, the 200 active premium subscribers. So I think it's quite nice because I don't really do anything to it now. So, yeah, and so not sure if I mentioned too, it's Android, iOS, but that's kind of the gist.
Yeah, that's awesome. I had a few questions I was saving, trying to remember what they were now. So yeah, one of them I was curious how well it's monetizing. How long has it been out?
It's been out, so I've only started monetizing ago, but it's been out, like, fully released was, 2022.
Okay.
So it's been a few years, but, when I first started it, it was extremely basic, and, I've kind of just iterated it on over through the years, so, yeah, all of it's just been.
How has it grown?
Just word of mouth, really. I've done some like Instagram posts and stuff like that, but the last time I did an Instagram post was probably 6 months ago or something at this point. So it just seems to grow, like with, the 420 thing, it had a huge spike that always happens. It also has, spikes around holidays.
Yeah.
I think because of the recipe sections, which is kind of odd. I think there's a main courses, I think people end up using this in particular based on this, cause I have analytics integrated. That seems to be what they're doing with, cause you can also get like,
Do you have, that content on a website somewhere?
No, I am in the process of doing that, but I just for fun, I decided I wanted to write a new website that I was using kind of as a portfolio, where it was a Node.js, React, using Tailwind for my stack, and then I had the backend oversell, and when I put that out, it was just so much better than my app, or my website with, for Canva for this, that it's just based HTML, CSS, that I'm just gonna redo it, cause the performance, the animations, everything are just not even comparable, and it's just so much easier to reuse code. So I'm waiting to do that, and then I'll be integrating, cause, what I noticed, the blogs, the SEO have really helped drive driven users, and I think that's part of the other thing, is that the blogs are pushing people.
I mentioned this, so my side project started like this, and it was like, it was initially like, oh wow, we made $1,000, and then it was like, oh, this is like a nice Christmas bonus, and then it just kept getting bigger, and, you know, I wouldn't work on it for months, sometimes years at a time, and then I'd have an idea, it's like, oh, let me try to do this one thing, and like, one of the things we did, those novenas that we have, we ended up, I cross-posted those, I created a website and published those for free on the web, and that was one of these, like, I've done a lot of things, but then sometimes things will just kinda take off. I initially published it, and it was in, medium.com, remember that?
Okay, yeah,
site?
yeah.
So it was in Medium, didn't do anything. It got a little bit of traffic, and like 1,000 hits a month or something. But so it was getting something from Google. And then for whatever reason, I think Medium decided to do like paid, and they started doing things with hijacking, like they were taking like the traffic that you drove to their site, and then they were redirecting it to other articles, recommending it to other articles off your site. And I didn't like that, and so I converted all the content to a static website, and then SEO took off. And then, so now that site is like one of the key drivers of traffic to our app. So, because people are always searching for a St. Corona novena, and then that drives traffic. So like, yeah, those recipes, like any sort of content you have like that, like, yeah, that's totally the play. Like,
Yeah, I think it's also just nice that it's free. I noticed too, I tried focusing on, SEO, particularly with the blog, posts, and then all of the blog posts, there's some other outside links, but they all essentially link to each other. And that just skyrocketed my SEO, and also if you end up searching those, a lot of them are like top on Google, just based off of the SEO that they implemented. And so I do plan on doing that with the recipes, but I wanted to add a few more features before I did that, because I figured then I'm providing a bit more, can't think of the word right now, but giving them like a bit more for what they were paying for.
Yeah.
And when I have that higher drive in SEO, could hopefully have a higher, or I guess less churn, because it does seem to have a high download rate, but my churn is still fairly high.
Yeah.
And I was charging for a while $20 a year, and then I switched to $5 a month, had a big drop, and then now it's actually going up really fast.
Okay.
I think it's because it's, the cheaper kind of,
Entry.
Entry, yeah.
Yeah.
I was worried it was gonna crash the app, but it ended up actually working out pretty well, so, but I do plan on doing that.
I might try that too, the monthly. The other.
And I still do, on the monthly, you can, there's still a yearly, I just end up having a tab bar here. Can't see it right now because the limited time offer is like super cheap, but, I typically, if this wasn't active, there's a really small tab bar that's monthly, they can switch to yearly, and the yearly is $44.99. I've had a few people do that, but almost everybody does the monthly, but I figure I can still give the option.
Right.
And I show the percentage that they save and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might try that as a test. Are you using anything like Revenue Cat on the back end?
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
using Revenue Cap, but I did just, get, which might be interesting for other people trying to monetize, Apple just, it went into action in the United States. You can legally now link to outside sources, so you don't have to pay the 30 or 50% depending, so it might be worth doing it. I haven't implemented that, cause I just saw the email like last week, but if you are generating funds from some kind of, like, service like this, that could be a huge boost, cause Apple was taking 30% and then eventually they approved it for the small business, but still 50% for just having on their the app store's kind of crazy.
Well, they do convert, like, they're doing currency conversion and tax,
Yeah.
and tax, and they handle, refunds. Like, anybody asks us any kind of question, we just give them a link to the Apple article that says, here's who you asked for the refund.
Yeah, they handle all of it.
They handle all that. And they deny refunds if they see suspicious activity on the user's side. They'll even deny it. It's like they handle all that. I think it's worth it. I don't wanna mess with it.
Yeah, I just saw the email, so
Yeah.
like, to be honest, I was thinking about it, but I haven't done anything
So
yet.
remember, your users have to now get a credit card out of their wallet.
Yeah, they can do the straight Apple Pay.
Yeah,
Straight Apple Pay is super convenient.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be worse. And then my last question was, you're integrating with HealthKit. So I just did that on one of my apps, and that was bad. Like, the differences platform-wise between iOS and Android.
Mhm.
Are you going to HealthKit, or are you doing like direct to wearables, or?
Just using healthcare right now, because
Okay.
the health, package is quite simple to use. I haven't had any issues yet, but I've been predominantly listing on iOS, so I don't know if it's more issues on Android.
Yeah, it's the issues where the cross-platform differences are significant.
Okay.
And that, I think I use that same health,
It's pretty popular.
Yeah, it's a pretty popular one. Because it targets everything HealthKit can do, that's so broad that they don't like really hone in on any one thing. And so mine was a step counter.
Okay.
And the step counters fundamentally work different on iOS and Android. And so I had, like, I'm even thinking to do it right, I might actually just kind of write my own,
Maybe like creating that method channel.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that too, but the overhead, I need to see also if it's actually worth it.
Yeah.
Because mine is for a few different things like respiratory rate, heart rate variability, stuff like that, because it has a huge impact, particularly with medical patients.
Yeah.
And then the idea is eventually to get exported and, bring to the doctor, so it's actually usable, but it would be worth consideration. I feel like there's a lot of issues like that too, like with the audio and video players. That was a nightmare with the audio player, because for the company I work for, it's, iOS, Android, and web, and making sure it works well on all of those platforms is
Yeah.
really difficult, so.
If you're doing anything out of the box, like web, that's where, some of the packages they're not as well tested there.
Yeah.
Oh, this is awesome.
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Is there any